Hi, everyone.
Hello. Genesis 12, the last 3 verses, it's the conclusion of the story of Abram and Sarai in Egypt. Not a happy ending.
So Pharaoh summoned Abram. "What have you done to me?" he said. "Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister, so that I took her to be my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go." Then Pharaoh gave orders about Abram to his men, and they sent him on his way with his wife and everything he had.
So at the very least, Abram is humiliated.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a friendly farewell.
Yeah. He doesn't honor God in his behavior.
And his witness is negated. We made the point in the previous section, his witness was strong in Canaan. He builds an altar to the name of Yahweh, something very different in the land of Canaan. And there's no altar here in Egypt. And you don't notice that when you're just reading through it. His witness is negative.
And it's an obvious lack of faith that God would keep him protected without this deceit.
I couldn't help but think of the text in Titus chapter 2. This is Titus 2 verses 6 to 8 in the ESV, where Paul gives the counsel to Titus to teach his congregations. He says, "Likewise, urge the younger men to be self-controlled. Show yourself in all respects to be a model of good works. And in your teaching show integrity, dignity, and sound speech that cannot be condemned, so that an opponent may be put to shame, having nothing evil to say about us." Now Pharaoh has something not so nice
To say.
as a memory of Abram and Sarah's visit. So the testimony of the father of all the faithful, the very first testimony to the Gentiles of Egypt anyway, is a negative one.
And you can't help but think too that the Watchtower basically ignores these mess up times. They don't concentrate much on those episodes in the lives of saints of the past, but it doesn't remove his relationship with God. God doesn't just say, "That's it, you're not an integrity keeper, you're out of the picture." No, he continues, because it's God's integrity that's important, not his servants so much. It's not them that's going to actually vindicate God. God vindicates himself.
So in the last segment we looked at the Watchtower's attempt to cover up or to whitewash the sins of the fathers. Well, they have to. And why is it that only gospels that are not gospels feel this necessity of whitewashing the saints? Because their gospel is graceless.
Yeah, it's by you that you vindicate God.
Yeah, and the great commentators of the ages have never done what we see the Watchtower habitually doing. And here's a couple of commentators, one of whom we might not have used before, Joseph Parker, in his People's Bible, very popular 100 years ago, and Griffith Thomas, both talking about the fact that this Abraham here is messing up. And he's implicating not only getting Pharaoh in trouble and his household, but his own wife. So Parker and Griffith Thomas, by the way, were contemporaries of Russell and Rutherford. Yet here they are, not justifying the misdeeds of the saints.
So Joseph Parker says, "It is a bad thing to rack our brains for excuses on behalf of the Bible worthies when they fall. If God did not excuse them, we need not stretch our charity into a covering for their sins. A lie was twice a lie in the mouth of a man like Abram. Where there was great grace, there should have been great courage. We are not to qualify the disgrace by talking about spots on the sun. We are to call poison poison, and to learn by the failure of other men that our own life will be called to trials which will need higher strength than mere human power." Yeah, should be a lesson for us. And then Griffith Thomas says, "Both Sarai and Pharaoh's house suffered through Abraham's sin. Another element in his bitter cup was the plain rebuke from the heathen Pharaoh. We have truly touched the depths of spiritual unfaithfulness when a believer has to be openly rebuked by the ungodly.
Yeah. And John Calvin, we see many persons zealous for a short time who afterwards become frozen. Whence is this? But because they build without a foundation. Therefore God determined thoroughly to rouse all the senses of Abram, that he might undertake nothing rashly or inconsiderately, lest, repenting soon afterwards, he should veer with the wind and return. Wherefore, if we desire to follow God with constancy, it behoves us carefully to meditate on all the inconveniences, all the difficulties, all the dangers which await us, that not only a hasty zeal may produce fading flowers, but that from a deep and well-fixed root of piety we may bring forth fruit in our whole life. For why does not God immediately point out the land, except for the purpose of keeping his servant in suspense, that he may the better try the truth of his attachment to the Word of God? Which is a flowery way of saying Abraham doesn't come to the fulfillment of the promise right away. He goes through several detours, and as Stephen points out in Acts 7, he actually never does possess the land.
Yeah.
But his adventure brings him to an ever deeper faith.
That's right. So it shows the purpose of trials in the life of people. That these are ways in which we are being strengthened and made into worthy saints, or not worthy, but made into saints, made into consistent people.
Sanctifying saints. We're already saints, as Paul points out in chapter 1 when he calls the Corinthians, who are new believers, saints and brethren, but we are sanctified and hopefully well sanctified by the time we end our travail in this earth. We made the point in the Proclaimers video recently that the Watchtower glosses over this entire period because it's an inconvenient truth that the patriarchs certainly were not integrity keepers most of the time.
Didn't shine consistently.
So we'll put in a link to that particular video from the Proclaimers series, but I don't think we mentioned in that series that Jacob, who's the biggest mess up of all, and gets half the book of Genesis, by the way.
Yeah.
He at one point claims, he complains to his own sons that they have made him a stench to all their neighbors.
That's during one of their mess-ups.
So that goes back to the Titus point that Paul is saying to Titus, no, make sure that the brothers understand that you have to give a testimony to the world. Your relationship, though, doesn't depend on that testimony. It's not at jeopardy at all times. So I'll put in a link to that Proclaimers video. And see you next time.
Yeah.
Oh, one more point. I think we should underline the main point of all of this, though. That it's the Gospels which diminish grace, which seek to excuse the saints. So it's not that the Watchtower is the only one that does that.
Yeah.
All Gospels which are wrapped around our obedience and our faithfulness must do that to the biblical testimony. See you next time.